summaries have returned to this fabled peninsula of surf and sand, offering a kaleidoscope of color to both needy natives and winter-weary wanderers. The sun has also brought out nature in every form. But despite the natural distractions, the wildlife and demand for drag races this weekend is the Gator. TNN Motorsports proudly presents final round coverage of the Mac Tools Gator Nationals live from Gainesville, Florida. Here's a recipe for a perfect family outing. A clean, modern facility jammed with the fastest cars in the world. Drivers and crews happy to talk to you, sign autographs, have their pictures taken. In fact, you can roam the entire place. And when it's time to see the Thunder, every seat is the best seat in the house. Hello, everybody. I'm Steve Evans. It's a beautiful day, and I wasn't kidding when I said they could roam just about anywhere. You know, we've had great action the last couple of days, but we've got a hard act to top because last year was sensational. In fact, let's take a quick glimpse back a year and 2 weeks ago. Okay, first off, it's the funny car semifinal round. Watch the far lane. That is Chuck Edgels up against Casey Spurlock. Chuck Edgels has a small fire developed into an inferno. He's in big trouble, but does an incredible job of scrubbing speed up against the wall so the safety safari can get to him. Edgels was not hurt, but I'll tell you, he and his crew chief, John Medlin, did not recover emotionally or mechanically the rest of the season. Next up in the Top Fuel semifinals, it was Kenny Bernstein's turn to burn. He had been blowing an engine every round. This time the fuse too short. Bernstein on fire. Scott Coletta went through the final round. And when he got there, who did he race for the first time ever in a final? His own father, Connie. And on this day, it was the old man's turn in the winner's circle. Connie went on in '94 to win the U.S. Nationals. Scott went on to win the Winston Championship. In Pro Stock, we should have known this was a preview of coming attractions. Two Dodgers, Scott Jeffrey on, Daryl Alderman into the final round. In fact, he won the Gator Nationals a year ago. All right, enough of the past, okay? Let's deal with the present. Here in the booth, Dave McClellan and Bob Fry. Gentlemen.
Steve, you talk about a great seat. We think we've got the best seat in the house, right, Robert? Looking right down this big racetrack here at Gainesville Raceway. We've had some outstanding performances this weekend in Top Fuel. You got to pick as a star Blaine Johnson. His third #1 qualifying spot of the season, low ET of the meet at a 473. In funny car, who else? John Force, 3 consecutive 5-0s in qualifying. What happened in Pro Stock?
Pro Stock, really, the story here was the starting line all weekend long. We had Steve Schmidt running a 704, and he lost. George Marnell ran a 704, and he lost. There were a couple of red light starts up on the starting line, too. Now, in Pro Stock, Warren Johnson and Kurt Johnson would get together in the second round. Earlier in the day, Warren had clocked that unbelievable 6.95. Now, the GM Performance car has been the hot car in qualifying this year in Pro Stock, much like Blaine Johnson. Much like Blaine Johnson, he's got nothing to show for it. He has not been able to get in the winner's circle. He would take on his son Kurt here in the second round. And like a lot of the races earlier, David, this one's going to be decided on the starting line. You wouldn't expect KJ to take a little time rolling in against dear old Dad, but that's exactly what happened. And bingo, the end result for Warren Johnson. Well,
take a look at this one, folks. This is round #2. That is Greg Anderson, the most honored crew chief in Pro Stock racing today. He's the head ranch for Dad Warren. Son Kurt was in the far lane, and as they rolled into the pre-stage beams, they sat there. And they sat there. Let's watch and listen. Finally, Warren moved. Kurt under the count. What an upset. 7:04. Kurt Johnson wins it. A 6:99 losing time for Warren. Let's go to Steve.
Hey, folks, stay tuned. When we come back, we're going to turn the wick up. In fact, why not attach your stereo speakers to your television set? That'll really warm up the room. Stay with us.
TNN's live coverage of the 1995 Mac Tools Gator Nationals is brought to you by Mopar, Chrysler Corporation Parts, and the Chrysler, Plymouth, Dodge Truck, Jeep, and Eagle dealers who sell and install them. And by Beechwood Aged Budweiser. It's always been true. This Bud's for you. And by Valvoline. People who know use Valvoline.
Welcome back to Gainesville. That was just, well, a little tease to get your blood pumped for the pro stock cars. You know, interestingly enough, you talk to a professional athlete, any of them, and they'll tell you there's some venues they don't like to play in because they don't perform well. They don't know why. They just don't. Well, the same thing could be said for Bob Glidden. In the 80s, he couldn't win here. Couldn't even qualify sometimes. He and both his sons qualified here and were gone by the second round. They don't know why. That's just the way it is. Dave?
Steve, talking about qualifying, Warren Johnson was the #1 qualifier. He ran a fine 6-second elapsed, or a 7:0 elapsed time to put him in the #1 spot. His opponent in round #1 was the brand new Slick 50 Pontiac Formula car of Bruce Allen. The fabled Rare and Morrison team is back, but it went for naught. How about Warren Johnson? 6:95, lowest elapsed time of the meet. That was in round #1. On the rest of the ladder, on the top of the ladder, Kurt Johnson defeated Joe Lapone. George Marnell and Darrell Alderman battled it out with the Winston champ winning, and Jerry Ekman defeated Steve Schmidt. On the other side of the ladder, we took a look at a race in round #1 as well. This time, it was Bob Glidden at the wheel of his Ford Quality Care probe on the far side of the racetrack. He was up against Scott Jeffreyon. Jeffreyon with the Mopar Dodge pulled away from the starting line and recorded his first ever 6-second elapsed time of 6:98 to win it at over 197 miles an hour. Son Rusty Glidden advanced over Ricky Smith. Mark Howick defeated Jim Yates, and Larry Morgan pulled off a whole shot victory over the #2 qualifier, Bill Glidden. The action moved on into round #2 here at the Gator Nationals. This was the team of Mark Howick and Scott Jeffreyon. A little bit of a staging war went on, and Mark Howick got a giant advantage off the line. We rode along with Scott Jeffreyon as Scotty looked out that left-hand window and saw Mark Howick take the win with a 7:07 elapsed time at 1:95. The next race was Larry Morgan against Rusty Glidden. Both dad and son felt the sting of Larry Morgan. This time it was Rusty leaving the red line on the starting line. Larry Morgan crossed the finish, a 7:12 at 1:94. Still in round #2, the Mopar Dodge Avenger, Darrell Alderman, the reigning Winston champ and current points leader, up against the Pennzoil Pontiac of Jerry Ekman. This one was over at the starting line as Darrell Alderman pulled away and took the win with a 7:03. Trailing was Ekman at a 7:10. And the final race in round #2 that we'll take a look at was the matchup father and son. Our race of the day. See the starter over telling Kurt to stage it. Well, he did, and he left about a 1/10 of a second ahead of Dad Warren. A sizable margin of victory and an upset for Kurt Johnson over the quick car of the field. Kurt running 7:04. In the final four, it was Darrell Alderman. He was against Kurt Johnson. A classic Mopar, and once again, Kurt was told, stage the car. But mechanical problems ended Kurt's run this day, and Alderman ran 7:03 at 197 miles an hour plus to advance to the championship round. That leaves Larry Morgan in the Castrol Super Clean Oldsmobile up against Mark Howick and his Summit Racing Olds. The margin of victory was 1/1000 of a second, and by just inches, Mark Howick won it. Steve?
Well, Dave, if you're in the pro stock pits looking for high drama, Wayne County Speed Shop is not where to find it. The Dodge is all together. There's no mechanics or no tools. And inside is Darrell Alderman just kind of contemplating his race with Mark Powick. You okay, Darrell? Are you awake, Darrell?
I'm awake.
Bob Fry?
Not exactly a lot of thrashing going along in the Mark Powick pit area either. You'd think these guys would be a little bit out of training. It's been quite a while since Mark Powick's been in a final. In fact, you have to go back to Arizona 2 full years ago. Somewhere, Darrell Alderman's lounging, and I'm not too sure that Mark Powick's not out looking for Jay Leno somewhere in order to get a little help for this final. It's going to be a tremendous pro stock final. Alderman in the Dodge. Can the Oldsmobile stop him? If they can, the only guy that can do it is going to be Mark Powick. Stick around. Some tremendous pro stock and other finals coming up.
TNN's live coverage of the Mac Tools Gator Nationals is being brought to you by the more than 1,000 AutoZone stores across America. AutoZone, the best parts in auto parts.
One of the biggest attractions at any NHRA national event, including the Mac Tools Gator Nationals, is the Manufacturers Midway. Over 150 of NHRA's major sponsors with all that performance equipment on display. If you can't get an answer there, you need another hobby. This is not for you. Here is Dave McClellan with the Funny Car Recap. You're not going to believe some of the upset he's got for you. David?
Steve, let's start with round number 1 action in the nitro-powered floppers. It was John Force and Jack Wyatt, number 1 and 16 qualifiers respectively. Force in his Castrol car had recorded a 5:06, but I don't think it was ready for Jack Wyatt staying quite as close as he did. John ran a 5:17 at 295. He had been over 300 in qualifying. The remainder of the top side of the ladder saw Chuck Etchels defeat Gary Bolger. Whit Bazemore pulled off a big upset over Mark Oswald, the number 4 qualifier, and it was Tom Hoover taking out the Mustang of Candies and Hughes with Gordy bonnet up. The other side of the ladder, last year's number 1 qualifier, Kenji Okazaki, the Moon Eyes car, was in the far lane against the McDonald's Pontiac. Cruz Pendragon at the wheel. In a classic struggle until mechanical problems shut down Kenji, Cruz went on to the win with a 5:15 at 291. Remaining winners in round number 1, the number 2 qualifier, Al Hoffman over Jim Epler. It was Dean Scusa topping Jeff Arend, and KC Hollywood Spurlock put Cruz's brother Tony Pendragon on the trailer. Round number 2 will pick up with Cruz Pendragon and the Pontiac in the near lane. The Dodge, the fruit of the loom car of KC Hollywood Spurlock. He won in round 1, but left a red light at the starting line against the Cruiser and wasted a fine 5:33 at 290. Cruiser got the break that so many racers say you have to have. The brand new Quick Shine Matco Pontiac of Dean Scusa was against the Winston points leader Al Hoffman. His Western Auto Slick 50 Pontiac let him down here. Well, you talk about an upset. How about Scusa? 5:23 or 5:27 rather, was his winning time. His speed was 280 miles an hour. Then John Force and Chuck Etchels, the 2 battlers for a Winston title, regardless of the season, met in round number 2. Force pulled away at the start. Etchels slowed at mid-track, and Force won it again with a 5:17, 296, the same kind of consistency he showed in qualifying. It was then the Pioneer Electronics Dodge. Tom Hoover was in the near lane against the fast orange Dodge of Whit Bazemore. Whit has his hands full as he crossed the finish line, the winner. Now back to the pits. Here again is Steve.
Well, with Al Hoffman out, John Force could see his points lead returning. It was on the horizon, but between him and it was Whit Bazemore in the semifinal round. John joins us live. You never know what to expect with Bazemore.
No, he's a real good driver, and he's got a good team over there. And what can I say? If we were lucky, we had problems. Clutch went away on the starting line. We had to swap motors. It's been a real drag.
Still ran a 5:23, and that'll give you lane choice.
Yeah, I thought she was on fire. Clutch blew up, and it was just a clutch to a little bit of fire. You know, get a little older, get a little nervous, but we're ready.
Have a safe final round.
Thank you.
Bob Fry is with the man he'll race in that final round.
For those of you that might be joining us the first time, let me tell you, John Force always thinks that baby's on fire. This kid's on fire. Dean Scusa going to the finals. Dean, you guys got to be tickled.
I'll tell you what, I think it's a perfect weekend for it, Bob. And we just signed 2 new sponsors, Matco Tools and Quick Shine 99. So yeah, I mean, what a weekend for everything go good, you know.
The semifinal round was a great matchup. I mean, Cruz needed to stay and keep pace with Forrest if he wanted to win, but you took care of that.
Well, I just have to take my hat off to Lance Larson. I mean, he didn't beat himself. He went out there. He was kind of conservative, but yet aggressive. It was kind of a perfect combination, I think.
You nervous?
I am, because I only faced John in the final once, and he beat me. We smoked the tires last year in Atlanta, so I'm just more psyched than anything.
There's a kid that loves to come up with a word for the day. The word for today might be nervous, might be hot, might be I'd love to knock his brains out here in the final of Top Fuel coming up. Top Fuel Funny Car Pro Stock, all the finals, stick around.
That's the kind of action we've seen for 2 days here at the Mac Tools Gator Nationals. You know, Top Fuel may offer more parity than any form of motorsports in the world. Consider, not only has there not been a repeat winner in 95, you have to go back to Labor Day of 94. 8 races, not one repeat winner. Believe it, that string could be exceeded today. Dave McClellan has the Top Fuel report. There's a guy that hasn't won yet.
We're going to show them what went on in round number 1 of Top Fuel Eliminator as we look at the number 1 qualifier, the Travers Tool Company car, Blaine Johnson at the wheel against last year's champion here at the Gator Nationals, Connie Coletta. This was not Coletta's day. Look at Blaine Johnson go. 4:73. That slow elapsed time of the meet thus far at over 305 miles an hour. So Eddie Hill got a chance to race Kenny Bernstein, and Hill won. Michael Brotherton topped Tommy Johnson Jr., who broke, and Scott Coletta, the reigning Winston champ, defeated Ron Capps. The other side of the ladder, crowd favorite Mike Dunn, the number 2 qualifier over Pat Dakin. Corey Mack beat Jim Head. Joe Amato had a big win over Shelly Anderson, and Larry Dixon, driving for Don Prudhomme, beat Pat Austin. That rounded out the action in the Valvoline ladder in Top Fuel Eliminator for round number 1. Now, in the second round, it was Larry Dixon, the Miller Genuine Draft car, in the near lane against Joe Amato. Amato redlit and then smoked the tires. Dixon, a very conservative and safe 485 and 287. Then it was Corey McClenathan. He's in the McDonald's car, owned by former NFL coaching star Joe Gibbs, up against Darrell Gwynn's La Victoria Salsa car with Mike Dunn up. Watch this. Dunn just hazed the tires in the middle enough to let Corey Mack get by. 483 at 303 miles an hour. Then Scott Coletta, the reigning Winston champ, was up against Michael Brotherton. You saw the leak out of Brotherton's LDDS car. He was forced to shut it off. Scott Coletta got a single. And boom went the supercharger. Scott slowed to a 546 at only 190 miles an hour, and he got the big break he may have needed to move into the next round. As Blaine Johnson came to the starting line against Eddie Hill, everybody was wondering, what was Blaine going to run this time? Backpedaling twice down the racetrack, it was a 489 and 294. Hill trailed with a subpar 494 from the Pennzoil car. In the final 4, Blaine Johnson in the near lane. Scott Coletta was in the far lane in the American International Airways car. Oh, so close in the final, a 483 to a 482. The whole shot off the starting line gave the win to Blaine Johnson. And the final matchup, Corey McClenathan against Larry Dixon, 2 of the young greats in this sport of championship drag racing. And smoking tires put Corey Mack in the trailer, and Larry Dixon ran 478 at 296. Steve?
Can't wait to see that final, Mac. Right now, though, as we do in all our live shows, we present the Mopar High Performer of the Race Award. And it goes to, drum roll, ba-bum, it goes to Scott Jeffreyon in the Dodge Avenger. You're on board. He became the 5th member of the Holly 6-Second Pro Stock Club. 6:98. He was to go out in later competition, but for that 6-second run, he is the Mopar high performer of the race winner. All right, everybody, stay tuned with us. When we come back, the real music machines of drag racing, the blown alcohol cars, both dragsters and funny cars. Turn it up when we come back. You'll love it. Hang in there.
Welcome back to the Mac Tools Gator Nationals. We are live right here on TNN as we get ready to go into the final rounds, and you are taking a look at the conclusion of a long, smoky, side-by-side burnout conducted by our finalists in top alcohol funny car, Frank Manzo and Bob Newberry. This has been quite a challenge for these racers. 2 weeks delay because of the rain out here at the Gator Nationals in Gainesville, Florida a couple of weeks ago. Bob Fry, these guys have gone through a lot to make it to the final round.
Dave, not only that, one of the real stories in this class was who did not come back. Pat Austin, a 4-time Winston champ, did not return to run the alcohol car. Randy Anderson, 2-time and reigning Winston champ, did not come back to race his car. Tony Bartone, the Southeast Divisional champ, did not come back to race his car. These two cars love this racetrack. Bob Newberry won here back in 1981 with his old Winston Championship comp eliminator car, won again in the alcohol class in 1990. Manzo himself, a former Winston champ with the Kendall car, won his first alcohol title here in 1983. I talked to both teams. I think the lanes are rather evenly matched. Two Northeast Division racers should be fun.
The Key Auto Parts car of Newberry is the favorite here in the final round. Why? Because he had a quicker elapsed time in his win in the semis over Tim Slagle. He went 5:86, 5:90 for Frank Manzo over Tim Wilkerson. So 0.13 of a second advantage. That is a giant advantage off the starting line, and he runs 5:87 at 2:44. The losing time much quicker, 5:81 at 2:44. But if you'll recall, I explained earlier the lanes are timed separately, and that allows a separate time for each lane. Regardless of when they leave the starting line, the clocks don't start until the car leaves. And that's how you can have a slower elapsed time for the winner. Apparently something was coming out of Bob Newberry's car. They'll be checking the racetrack over as Jay Payne gets set to go in the finals of top alcohol funny car, or top alcohol dragster. And it is Bobby Turner in just a moment. Take a look. Those are Pro Stock motorcycles. We're going to be back in just a few moments for the finals in top alcohol dragster and the Pro Stock bikes coming up from Gainesville. TNN's live coverage of the Mac Tools Gator Nationals is brought to you by Pep Boys Automotive Supercenter.
Just Gainesville. Gainesville, Florida is an absolutely beautiful college town, proud of the University of Florida Gators, and very proud of the Gator Nationals drag races. In fact, the drag races bring more people and more money into the economy of Gainesville than does homecoming at the University of Florida. It's an absolutely huge event, and I'm telling you, the hotels, the motels, the restaurants, the citizenry, they really roll out the red carpet for all of NHRA Championship drag racing. It's a venue we look forward to coming back to year after year, especially with the improvements NHRA is making to the racetrack. This has become one of the real great venues in professional motorsports. Well, you know, as pretty as the town of Gainesville is, and we'll all go to dinner there tonight, but we got a few more final rounds for you first. Here's Dave McClellan with the top alcohol dragster final.
Well, what we have seen is our NHRA Safety Safari hard at work to clean up the liquid overflow that came out of Bob Newberry's alcohol funny car. They are just about completed with that. But what we watched down here in our starting line position, Bob Fry, were the two dragsters changing lanes. What's that all about?
I think it's obvious at this point that Jay Payne was the quicker car in the last round by a bunch. As a matter of fact, he gets his choice of lanes, as you mentioned during the alcohol funny car final, David. Now, they watched the oil go down from Bob Newberry, which is unusual. I mean, Bob Newberry hardly ever has any mechanical problems and everything, but he oiled it, and a pretty good path of oil down there in the right lane. Jay Payne just psychologically figures, hey, I want to deal from the best deck, have the best hand, switched over, and he's going to run on the far side of the racetrack. These are two cars they're going to play for the Winston Championship, David.
The cleanup is completed. The engines have started. They'll approach the water area, and then they'll stand on the throttle Getting them hot, that's the whole desire, and clean as well, and it also transfers some rubber back on the racetrack. Bobby Taylor is hoping he's putting down a sheet of rubber to at least the 1/8 of a mile. Bob Taylor at the wheel of Gary Turner's cars had a good season already.
Oh, it's been a great start for the Taylor-Turner combo. I mean, somewhere out there watching on TNN today, Chuck Baird sitting around watching, Tom Conway sitting around watching. So are some of the other heir apparents to that Winston championship that Tom Conway has right now. Bobby Taylor, if he can go out and win this, would be his third straight win, or third win on the season in this category. Just a historical note, if I may. Cruz Pedregon, Darrell Gwynn, Joe Amato, all winners, all at this track, all in Top Alcohol Dragster.
While Taylor has had a great run thus far this season at the wheel of Turner's car, so is Jay Payne this weekend. In fact, Jay holds low elapsed time for the Alcohol Dragsters at a 5:73. That was recorded in the semifinal round. That's why he had the right, if you will, to make the choice of lanes and put Bobby Taylor, rather, over there on the far side of the track. Jay Payne wins it, and the oil didn't offer Bobby Taylor or Bobby Turner a bit of problems. 5:74, the winning time for Payne at 2:44, 5:85 at 2:34. For Bobby Taylor. The sounds you're hearing, of course, are Pro Stock Motorcycle finalists. And this is one of the classic matchups of all time. It has taken place over the years with David Schultz and John Myers battling it out. Schultz, the #1 qualifier at the wheel of the Sunoco Suzuki. He is in against John Myers. Myers, by 9/1000ths of a second, was a little bit slower than Schultz. That gives Schultz the chance to pick the lane. You had a shot from a camera looking back at Dave Schultz. He's fastening his visor. His wife bearing it down to turn the switch that activates the onboard recording device. Keeps track of all the functions of the engine. Over on the opposite side, John Myers, the Star Racing bike. John, a former Winston champ. Dave Schultz, the current champ. Guess what? He may not know it, but I'm sure he saw it as he rode by. David Schultz left a red light on the starting line. Look at John Myers. You just think he might have scored a hat trick in hockey. Schultz losing by the red light. John Myers taking the win at a 7:58. Bob Fry?
I don't know if you can tell, but underneath that helmet, there's a smiling Mark Power. Mark, how you feeling?
Great, Bob. Glad to be here. You know, it's almost exciting as Jay Leno, but I think this might just win it. But, Bob, you're still the funniest.
I love it. Anybody that thinks I'm funnier than Jay Leno is okay with me. Over on the other side, it's going to be Darrell Alderman, the Dodge boys, getting set to go as we will match up in the finals. And I know that somewhere out there, Darrell's got to say hi to some pretty nice people back in Kentucky.
Yeah, I was wanting to say hello to my mom and dad, Bob.
They got to be excited watching this, another final, huh?
Yeah, I don't think they were expecting me to be in the final today with my qualifying position.
Yeah, like they weren't expecting to see him in the finals, sure. Finals and Pro Stock are next.
Welcome back to Gainesville Raceway, the 26th annual Running of the Back Tools Gator Nationals, and it is the four-wheel versions of the Pro Stockers. You saw the two-wheelers just a moment ago as John Myers won his first event this season. Here's Pro Stock. Oldsmobile and Dodge. Darrell Alderman, the reigning Winston champ, the guy that is leading the points this season, is in the lane nearest our cameras. He won at the Winter Nationals at Pomona to start the year. He won at Phoenix at the second race of the year. His teammate Scott Jeffrey won about a month ago down in Houston. But it's been a long, dry spell. Bob Fry for Mark Powick at the wheel of the Summit Racing Oldsmobile.
Dry is the way he likes it. He won out in the desert at Arizona back in '93. Now, this is interesting. I talked to the riders in Pro Stock Bike. Dave Schultz definitely wanted to be on the left side of the lane. And here, Dave Butner said, hey, our car actually runs better over here on the far side of the racetrack. He said, we're kind of happy being here and think that this might be the little bit of an edge that we need to take out the Dodge.
Dave Butner, the crew chief on Mark Powick's Summit Racing Oldsmobile. Mike Sullivan and David Hutchins, the co-crew chiefs, out of that fabled Wayne County Speed Shop team. This is a battle that may be decided on the starting line. It'll be interesting to see. Do we have a bit of a war going on? Did everything right except win the race. He left first, ran a good elapsed time at a 7:14, but nowhere near good enough. 7:03 for Alderman, a speed of 196, 3 out of 4, a 750 batting average for the 1995 season. Not bad at all for the Dodge Avenger Mopar of Darrell Alderman. Let's watch this in replay. A great hole shot by the Summit Olds with Mark Powick up, but it didn't really make much difference. As they approached the finish line, about in the middle of the racetrack, you see some problems on Mark Powick's car. He fell back, and it was Alderman by more than a car length at the finish line. In car, this is in real time. That's what it looks like to ride along with Darrell Alderman. Let's go to Steve.
Well, Mom and Pop Alderman, your bouncing baby boy did good at the Gators. 7:03.
Yeah, you know, I think it would have been a little quicker, but it went left with me. It hooked harder. And Steve, I'd like to dedicate this race to Mike Mold and David Hutchins, his father, from back in Fairfield, Illinois. As a matter of fact, all the fine folks from Fairfield, Illinois.
Well said. Bob Fry?
The Diamond P. What a great drag race it's been, and of course you'll be able to catch all this action on an upcoming Diamond P video, but one you don't have to wait for, the magnificent new version of And They Walked Away. This is And They Walked Away 4, and it's got everything. It's got motorcycles, it's got top fuelers, funny cars. A great new addition in this show is the unlimited hydroplanes, and I want to tell you, these babies can fly. Why not call the number on your screen and order? It's one of the greatest in the long series of And They Walked Away. The brand new tape, And They Walked Away 4, brand new, with Steve Evans doing the narrating. Hope you'll call up and order this tape if you haven't had a chance to see it. Some of the footage in this thing is unbelievable, and I'll tell you, from a guy that's never watched those boats, I think that I'm really going to enjoy this. The hydroplanes, the top fuels, funny cars, and pro stockers, it is a great, great tape. Hurry up, call now, the Diamond P tape, And They Walked Away 4.
TNN's live coverage of the Gator Nationals is brought to you by Mac Tools, the #1 tools in motorsports. TNN's live coverage of the Mac Tools Gator Nationals is brought to you by Allied Signals Fram Filters. You can pay a little now or a lot later. We want to welcome you back to Gainesville Raceway. Boy, look at this crowd. Are they having a good time in the Florida sunshine? I should certainly hope so. And we are as well, because we have got 2 more final rounds of this 26th annual running of the Mac Tools Gator Nationals to present to you live here on TNN. The finalists in funny car, John Force, he's been there before, but Dean Scusa has not been there often. Bob Fry is with Dean's dad, Don.
Dean's dad, Don, and what a day.
Yeah.
You'd like to do it here, huh?
Yeah, we're going to do it. Take it on, John.
Tell us what you guys have thought about during this whole evolutionary process to get to this final round.
Beating John Force.
So this final wouldn't be any less important if somebody else were in it, would it?
No, it wouldn't.
Now, you guys have gone the entire route. You started, you struggled, you ran some match races. We saw you on the tour for a couple of years, and you really were in those teething problems trying to get this car straightened out. It's come full circle now. You got some sponsorship on the race car, and you guys are ready to play with the big boys.
That's right. I got a great team, good crew chief. Glenn Mikers from last year helped us out a lot. Lance is really helping us now. We're going to get him.
It's got to be a tough thought process when you go and change the crew chiefs. Glenn Mikers really got you guys on track in the beginning, and now Lance Larson, acknowledged by a lot as one of the real smart guys in this business, seems to have you guys on the right track.
Exactly. He finesses it. He just turns the little screws.
What do you tell the boy? Your kid is such a nice kid and everything like this. You give him any words of encouragement here before the finals?
Have a good ride, big boy.
Any word for the day?
Not me. I don't.
No word for the day from Dad. Dean's got a word, and so does Dave.
Bob, the word of the day joke is about Dean Scusa, his crew, and his dad. They give him a word every race to work into interviews, not only here on TNN, but also on the track PA system. That's Lance Larson getting in under the car with a final word of advice for Dean Scusa as he comes up against the very best in the business, John Force. We've got the very best for you as well right here during 1995. The live schedule here on TNN. 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, Englishtown, New Jersey will be the site of the coverage of the Mopar Nationals on May the 21st. I hope you got a calendar or notepad and can mark these down as I give them to you, because our live coverage will bring you up close to all the action that takes place in the pro categories at each of these events. June the 4th. 5 p.m. again, Eastern Daylight Time, live on TNN from Richmond, Virginia, that brand new super track. Virginia Nationals, it'll be yours on the 4th of June. Then September the 4th at 4:30 p.m. from Indianapolis, Indiana, the granddaddy of them all, the U.S. Nationals, the biggest race on the NHRA Winston Trail over that Labor Day weekend. You'll be there on the 4th of September. September 17th, the Pioneer Electronics Keystone Nationals. 5 p.m. is the air date and the time on the 17th of September from Reading, Pennsylvania. October 1st at 6 p.m. Eastern, we're going to be in Topeka, Kansas for the Sears Craftsman Nationals and the Winston Select Finals, wrapping up the year out in Pomona, California, just as we started it at the fabled Fairplex. Live coverage at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, the last weekend in October. The specialty events, the DuPont Pro Stock Challenge, May the 20th at 6. September 2nd, 5 p.m., the Wax Shop Motorcycle Pro Bike Dash, the Big Bud Shootout, the 3rd of September from Indy at 5 p.m. Eastern, and the Budweiser Top Fuel Classic, the 28th at 7 p.m. Here again, Bob Fry.
Well, the biggest dash might be the one for John Force to get into the staging lanes. Normally you would expect with a guy like Force taking on a kid like Scusa that the Scusa family would be the ones that were having problems, a little nervous, maybe trying to make sure that everything is put back in its proper place. We've been sitting out there on the launch pad with Dean Scusa's car for quite some time, and John Force just now rolling around and getting into the staging lanes. You may be able to hear the round of applause from the crowd behind him. Scusa's one of those guys who would probably say, hey, I'll sit here and wait for Force. I want to run him. But, hey, if Force comes up and uncorks a 5-0 on him or something, it could be a different story. You never can tell. So the funny car finals getting set. The top fuel drivers are now in the staging lanes. A couple of good finals should be coming your way here in just a second. And it's the nature of live TV as we sat there and waited for John Force. Now, normally, if a car is going to be late getting in, the NHRA people send a word up to you and say that a guy's having problems or he's going to be late. That was not the case here. We expected Force to be in the lane exactly the same time Dean Scusa was. We kept turning around, and John was nowhere to be found. But Force is in there, and you can bet that he's going to give Dean Scusa a real run for his money. Force looking to put his second win on the season up on the board. Dean Scusa only one final. That was against Force. He blew the tires off at Atlanta last year in the finals, and they feel that they're a lot more confident going into this championship right now. So we got two cars. We got lots of cameras. We got lots of announcers, and one of the best up in the booth. David?
Bob, I got to think for Dean Scusa, it's kind of like calling timeout before a free throw in a basketball game. Give the guy something to think about. He's been sitting inside that car just stewing away. Here we go, the finals in funny car. John Force didn't do much to conserve time here. He gave Dean Scusa even more time to think about it as he did one of his patented super long burnouts. Who likes that the best besides John? He claims it's a lot of fun to do it, and I would not doubt him at all. But the fans absolutely are thrilled every time John does one of those long, smoky burnouts well past the 8-mile mark. He'll be back in time to match up with Dean Scusa as they get ready to stage at the same time. You can already see Force coming back at a rather rapid pace. John is looking for number 5 in 95. He is a 4-time Winston champion. Dean Scusa, his only final round appearance was against this same driver. And now with the advent of new sponsorship from Quickshine 99 and Matco Tools helping the Scusa family's racing operation, they're challenging the best in the business, the Castrol GTX Pontiac Formula Firebird, driven by the loquacious one himself, John Force. John's had a little trouble with his voice this weekend, but he told me before the race started, he says, I assure you, I'll have plenty left for whatever interviews you want on TNN Live. Austin Coyle directing John into the spot. He wants him on the starting line. Don Scusa doing the same for his son. Into the pre-staging process. Difficulties getting John to the staging lanes. It didn't show in his racing. 5:16 at 291. Scusa trailing at a 5:30. 2:58. He challenged him to the best of his ability, but once again, John Force is proving without a shadow of a doubt that he is the class of funny car racing. Let's take a look. Maybe the delay helped John and hurt Dean Scusa. Scusa slightly slower on reaction time off the starting line. John Force built an early lead. As he marched his way down the racetrack, he may have been having a few problems internally, but as it was showing, puffing some flames out of those left-hand header pipes. The crew celebrating. There was a lot of work. Remember, he had a problem with a clutch in the previous round. Let's go to Steve.
John Force, you got your Winston points lead back.
It's a great feeling. It's fun racing a kid like Scusa. He's got a lot of heart, but my old Pontiac, she romped out there, and that'll keep Castrol, Jolly Rancher, Craftsman, all the boys happy. She ran good. We struggled all through the round. Clutch was coming out again. I didn't think she was going to make it, but we're okay.
All right, John Ford, stay with us, folks. When we come back, our final top fuel dragsters, the kings of the sport. We might see 300 miles an hour side by side. Hang in there with us.
TNN's live coverage of the Mac Tools Gator Nationals is brought to you by All Pro, Bumper to Bumper, the auto parts specialist. Welcome back to Gainesville Raceway. We are here for the finals in Top Fuel Eliminator, the last race of what has turned out to be an extended double weekend of action at the Mac Tools Gator Nationals. You're looking at the smile of Larry Dixon. He hopes in just a few seconds he'll have that big a smile on his face because he is challenging the quickest car of the weekend. This is Blaine Johnson, the rising star in Top Fuel Racing at the wheel of the Travers Tool Company car. Bob Fry, these two lanes look pretty good.
Yeah, the lane's not going to be a factor here, David. These two cars are both running well. Johnsons have not hurt a whole lot. Remember, we've had 299 300-mile-an-hour runs. If one of these guys does it, it'll be 300 right here at this racetrack. I talked to Don Prudhomme a minute ago, and he said, man, I'm more nervous than I ever was as a driver.
Don Prudhomme enjoying the efforts of Larry Dixon in his first season as a Top Fuel driver. Dixon, in just 4 races, has already been a winner and is in contention for the Winston points chain. The tension beginning to mount, the concentration level increasing for both drivers. It's now up to them. And Larry Dixon wins number 2. Look at the time. 4.734 at 302 miles an hour. We round it out. 3 500 300-mile-an-hour runs in NHRA Winston Championship drag racing, and it came on the track where the very first one came in 1992. Watch this in replay. The advantage went to Blaine Johnson by 0.06 of a second off the starting line, but he could not take advantage of it. Engine problems and loss of traction cost him, but look at Dixon. 473 in the Miller Genuine Draft car at 302 miles an hour as Don Prudhomme and crew celebrate victory number 2 for 95. Steve?
Well, Dave, no professional driver bats 500%, but this young man has 2 for 4.
Thanks a lot. You know, what can I say? Wes Cerny, the whole Miller team did a hell of a job, and I'm just getting to drive the car. You know, Snake, he's helping so much. And
473 at over 300.
Thank you. That's great to hear, you know. If it wasn't for Wins, Pure Later, GMC trucks, and the rest of the guys here, I wouldn't be able to do it, you know. Thanks.
Thank you, Larry Dixon. Stay with us, folks. We have some closing comments.